sitting, I don't think the microphone goes up that high. Right? So I guess being the final part of today, we'll make, yeah, that's good. I was going to say Fabian and Derek should snuggle and let the girls have their own conversation. We obviously have met everybody, and we're not going to go into introductions, and we know a lot of their stories. So one of the things that we, what Krista said, is changing the narrative and how we're going to do it. And one thing that COVID has done is taught us that how much we miss that community and how we have to be there. So we've got a really interesting panel. We've got no tech, low tech, and obviously high tech. So I want to kind of go here and talk about how are we going to make all this work together. And literally, these are none of the questions that I sent out to you beforehand, so you're screwed. It's kind of like how I just roll it anyway, right? So I got you, get ready. So when we talk about the community, how do you think we are going to be able to use the low-tech side of it, being together, getting us together again, and feeling comfortable and not going, oh my God, I got COVID, and be able to hug each other. So Blaise, why don't you start us off, since you haven't had to answer any questions today.
And I'm a firm believer, like vulnerability. So it doesn't even matter if I'm on a camera or in person. If I am walled up and robotic and analytical and practice rehearsed answers and bullet points, that's going to starve connection no matter what, whether it's through a screen or through in person. So I'm going to challenge myself to be vulnerable and be real. And I don't need to wall myself to protect myself anymore, because my protection comes from my vulnerability. That's where my strength is. So it defies all human logic, because you want to cope, survive, go back into sympathetic nervous system, wall up, disengage, protect from COVID, 6 feet apart. Well, we need to draw closer and actually defy that feeling inside. So that's my thing, is I always, when I'm feeling triggered, and I know that feeling, because I get heart palpitations and my ears are ringing and my head gets really hot. And that is eject, abort, get out, right? And then I have to sit there and say, no, you have to do the opposite. So whenever you're getting triggered, whether it's COVID or anything that's happening where you want to disengage and eject, you draw forward. So that's my big tip.
Nice. Let's go down the road. Fabian?
Okay. That's a hard one to follow. You know what, for me, I just revert back to kind of my personal experience. Like I mentioned at the beginning, I do Indigenous and local engagement. There's a lot of mediation, and I found that I like difficult situations. I like having challenging conversations that usually a lot of people don't like to have. But usually how I get through those is by giving them a piece of myself. So I continuously just try to humble myself in any conversation I'm having and let people know that I'm also struggling. When we did one of our podcasts at the start of last year, we talked to a guy who went to high school with us. And one of the things he said to us is man, I'm shocked that you two are doing this mental health thing. I never would have thought you guys look like you went to parties, like you live. And I was and that's really what it's about. It's I think if we can celebrate every person for being vulnerable, and that's what we're trying to do at Men's League. We highlight men that share stories, we celebrate them. If we can, and you're seeing athletes start to come out and they're getting celebrated, the more of that celebration we see, the more likely other people are going to want to be vulnerable. So that's my answer.
Nice. Derek?
Yeah, just to kind of quickly double down on that, I think it's very important to have that low-tech side. From our experience so far, is that intimate face-to-face connection that you can make with people really makes a difference. It's great to have the online resources, it's great to have ways to connect through a screen or otherwise, or a call, but we've seen the biggest impact through that face-to-face and through that low-tech engagement. So it's really something that's important to us, and I think should remain a staple in what we're trying to do.
So I have my favorite quote to share, and I learned it from a Billabong t-shirt that I used to wear when I was a kid. And it said, "The love that you give is the love that you feel." So I think one of the ways when you're feeling that vulnerability and it's time to lean in, I think it's what can you do for someone else, whether it's a human or maybe even an animal, at that point. I think that's a good first step to starting to get to a point where you can give back more and be more integrated into the community.
Oh, good, great answers. And again, I'm all about that. I'm like Tara. I want to be there. I'm in front. Founders Coffee was started because of that, right? I want that interaction. It's important to me. It was important during our journey with Kath. So I want to go to the high-tech side here for a little bit. And I know, Crystal, you can lead this off, but we have a lot of great things, what Ty's doing and what Sophie is doing, and then there's many, many more other apps and things that are out there. So how do you think high-tech is going to change the narrative moving forward?
It's a good question, and I always kind of preface the high-tech thing with it's not the answer to everything. I think it's a really valuable tool. For example, mindfulness is something where we all know there's a power of mind. What you think sometimes makes you feel a certain way. That's understandable. However, why isn't it accepted in Western medicine? Why isn't it accepted in many practices in health? I think tech gives us ability to better read and understand what does mindfulness actually physically do to our brains and our bodies. We're able to now see that. In fact, we funded research out of Victoria looking at the brains of monks that were meditating, and they could see the neurological changes happening. Another one is we funded research on an app that used music and movement to motivate the brain to change itself in Parkinson's patients. And so we've seen patients go from not being able to walk up those stairs to using the app and being able to walk without any freezing, restoring the quality of life and let alone their mental health capabilities. So those are two little examples. I also spoke a little bit earlier about neuromodulation and that crazy gut capsule that captures your microbiome in your small intestine. I think I could probably be up here for a long time if I rattled off all the tech, but that's just an example of, maybe you understand what's going on in your microbiome, but that's still one piece of knowledge. It still means that you have to do other things like change your diet, change your medication, whatever the case. And with the music and movement, you still have to move and you still have to play the music or adopt the technology.
Oh, absolutely. So we want to jump way over here to Blaise. So, and you guys aren't off the hook yet. You got the hardest one. Thank you. So, Blaise, obviously your story is very inspirational. I've had you on Telling It Like It Is. And I know you don't have an app, but you're there. You're telling your story. Like watching you just up here, you're natural. You know how to help people. So, how are you good? Is there any plans for you to integrate any tech into what you do, or is it just not something that you need to do because you just don't need the tech? I don't need tech to do certain things, but tell us from on the other side of the spectrum.
Yeah, well, and I'm open to anything. We all go towards our bend, right? I'm a former broadcaster, so that's why, right? I do this, I help people, I speak on a stage, but tech has such an incredible gift because it's creativity, and I'm all about creativity. So I'm an open sponge to whatever that comes into my path to integrate that, and whatever that may be, but it allows to connect the young with the old, because the old has to evolve. Like, I worked in the hospital, that was my first career, and I worked on typewriters in the hospital, right? And our parents and grandparents, they really had to evolve quicker because it's happening quicker, but our kids and the teenagers, they're getting it firsthand and they're adapting. But we're able to allow this creativity to really connect. And so I think technology and tech and everything with that is really the creativity component to keep it interesting, to keep it, mindfulness, and it's not just a mantra, and get people's brains to see the importance of it, and it's just like different flavors. So it allows that creativity factor to whet the appetite of humanity. So I definitely want to integrate that more, but also stay true to what I am good at. I don't need to be all techie just to say I'm popular, right? I got to stay true to who I am. So yeah.
Oh, and nor would I want you to change. And now we get to Mensley with, you know, Derek and Fabian. You guys are kind of doing both. You're going down the tech side, you're going down the app side, but yet the movement started as we want to get guys in the room together to kind of, well, we say hug it out, right? Talk about it, open it up. So how are you guys going to integrate both of it and use that moving forward?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. We realize and recognize that the tech is going to be a big part of what we do moving forward, and it's how we're going to integrate it. More importantly, it's how are the men going to receive it, and are they actually going to use it? I think that's our biggest challenge, is that we can implement the tech and put the resources in place, and we have with some of our applications. It's just that, are the men aware and willing to kind of dive in and engage with that platform in that way? We've learned that people respond differently to this conversation, and they're comfortable making their first step in their way, and whether that's through an application or not, or through an event in person, or through a one-on-one sharing opportunity. So I think it's important for us to do both, and I think our biggest hurdle in our message is just going to be to make sure they're comfortable with making that step, I think, and let them find their journey on the way. So.
Sorry, I have one more thing to say on that note, and I'm going to quote one of the founders at Thin Air Labs. He always says the innovation of ways, not just the innovation of things. Because if I put my investor hat on, people will come to us and they'll have the new tech, and it will be the perfect app or the perfect technology. It's really sleek, it works well. But if you don't have a way to integrate that into a system, you don't have a way to market it to people, you don't have a way for capturing a market, it's not that useful at all, despite what it could be. So looking at and about the innovation of ways, not just the innovation of things.
And that was actually my next question. How, but Fabian, you're starting this one off. So how are we going to take this tech? And, you know, I mean, let's say 75% of your apps on your phone are and the rest kind of just get used 25% of the time. And there's a lot of apps on my phone. So when Men's League is going to go out and put it out there, how are you going to make sure that you get it into the right people's hands? How are you going to share your story through tech to connect to the community? Yeah, I told you it's going to be hard.
Yeah, I mean, I think my answer is going to kind of answer the question that was answered before, and hopefully it answers some of that. I think the only thing we know on this planet for sure is we're all different, 100%. I tell a story of that I grew up in a house with a brother, 17 months apart, same rules, same religion, same schooling, completely different people. We went to blows, we disagree. So when we talk about tech, and we talk about low tech, and we talk about how our guys are going to integrate, I think that's why Derek and I, and you and Pete would know very well of all the different components we're trying to build with Men's League, is guys are going to respond to different ones. And we don't want to force them down one path. We want to have them all there and let them take the first step, whichever layer that is that works for them. If that's going to a clinic and talking straight to a psychologist, let's get going. You know, doing the maintenance is a huge thing. If it's calling in on our virtual mental health check-ins at the comfort of your home, you're not going to a therapy to see a psychologist, or you're talking to a professional, there's an option there. If you want to just do courses online, stay at home, do some courses online at your own pace. You know, come to a community event. You know, some of our events you don't have to necessarily talk, you don't have to participate, you can just be a fly on the wall, see other guys do it, understand that it's okay to share. So I think that the theme for me is that everyone's different, and there is no right or wrong way. And sorry, I know I'm taking a long time here, but the last thing I wanted to say is we even have to think about that as you tailor it to the different groups. Like, I've had great conversations with people here about, you know, the Farmers Association, or, you know, first responders, or this message isn't all-encompassing cookie cutter. We have to change the way that we market it, as we were all just saying, and how we deliver that to those different groups is going to allow them to engage.
Yes, Blaise?
Yeah, I think tech creates exposure, tech creates connection, and expands your reach, because, you know, I'm here and I will always be human, and I will always have human experience, but I can only be here. So that allows me to transport all over the world. And so that is the future. But the challenge is to not just lean into tech and lose human spirit, right? So I think the creativity part is connecting those two, and really innovative ways to really reach people's hearts in the new tech way that intrigues people, because we're evolving, we're always thinking of more. So like, how do we incorporate, how do we expand that reach but not lose the core message? And that's a challenge, for sure.
Absolutely. Derek, what do you think?
I think when I think of like the top 4 apps that I use, right? Going through my head in the back of my head here, and it's value to me. So there's something there that I go on that my brain thinks to itself, okay, go onto that app. You're going to receive something, whether it's information, knowledge, something that you can go on there and take away relatively quickly, right? And so I think that'll be a challenge for us, is making sure that we can have that value-based information or resources for guys to go on and be able to quickly take that away. You know, whether they're riding the bus or, you know, waiting for their coffee to be made or something like that. Just applications and technology that they can go in and do things quickly and step away from the app. I'd love to hear your opinion.
I've already answered this.
Take on over, hey? Hey,
All right, Jade,
you're
tell us how
taking
you
one.
feel.
Sorry,
Take
one
it over.
Yeah, one more thing, right?
Sorry.
So I guess, Amy, moving forward into the community, and again, this is not supposed to be all about tech. It's supposed to be about how it's going to help our community. So what I want to use, or what I want to see from an app, and what I don't need from an app is going to differ from what our 11-year-old daughter is, and what my mom uses to play crib. So how are we going to use technology, on the mental wellness side, to get from 15 to 85? How is there a way to kind of encompass everybody, or are we just going to have to segment and have, well, this is going to be this low tech, this is going to be high tech? So Crystal, why don't you start?
Okay, I'll start. I actually think the big tech companies are all over this problem, and they're working on it right now because they're trying to expand their market size. They want to reach everyone, and so they're being studied. My big question for all people who think about tech is, are we having enough ethical conversations around where does tech lead? At what point is tech going too far in a direction? And although intentions might be great at the start, it might turn into something that's actually more destructive than helpful. So I think it's really worth us having those types of conversations more often, and more so than what's the newest, latest cool gadget. Because even magnetic brain stimulation, I'm glad that it's in a scientific space where it has to gain ethical approval, and there's a lot of academic conversation and philosophical conversation around magnetic brain stimulation, because as an athlete, of course my mind goes towards, is this going to be the new doping in sport? Because just like you can increase the brain activity in a depressed area of a brain, you could also increase a focus area of the brain, and how great of an advantage would that be for an executive or a professional athlete? So what can we do now to create those conversations and make sure we're using tech for good in the long term, not just in the short term?
I love that, tech for good, yes.
I just want to echo off of that, because that's so important, and that's the question we always need to ask. Like, even though we can, should we? Right? And so just going along with with my work is all about body image and helping high school kids, and knowing their worth and knowing their number on the scale doesn't define their value or their beauty. And then we go to Instagram and Facebook, where they knew that they were negatively impacting these girls, and they did it anyways. And now they're working against what I'm doing of trying to solve that problem. So just because it's a great idea doesn't mean we should keep doing it, or maybe we should change the way and really be more mindful about it. So it is a deep conversation, and not just about what the latest tech is, it's about how to balance that. And that is a tricky balance.
Derek?
I think for us, I'm not going to pretend to be a tech expert in any stretch, but I fall back to our community and just that actual face-to-face. Like, maybe I'm old school. I'm excited for what tech can provide and the opportunities it will bring. But for me and for our community so far, it's been that physical in-person connection that really helps people make the first step and create conversation around improving their mental health.
Fabian?
It's very rare, but I have nothing to add. That was brilliant. I was done talking.
Mic drop.
And I was okay. Go ahead, Jake.
I'd say I think that deserves a 2 clap. You know, the last question is one that I ask on my show, and I really want to get all 4 answers, and it doesn't have to be about tech. It's just about what if you want to have somebody to take one takeaway from today, this event, and as Tara said, that one thing, what would it be? And Fabian, lead us off.
That's smart, kid. These guys keep dropping wisdom bombs, and I've got nothing again. I guess for me, to be a 2-parter, for the ladies in the room, it would be, if a man is trying to be vulnerable, give him that space. And then for the men, you're not alone. It's on Jade's t-shirt. We both know the guy that came up with that company. Every single story that I've heard from every single guy since we've started this, and we've had the lovely pleasure of being with many therapists and many people that are interested in what we're doing, it's never been a story that anyone's ever been like, oh my God, why would you share that? Every single time a man has stepped forward and become vulnerable, every single time, it's been met with reception of positivity and support. So that would be my 2 takeaways. And this was awesome. Thanks, Krista.
Go ahead, Jared.
All right, I think it's about being present for me, I think, is being present, whatever side of the coin you're on, whether you're looking to speak with somebody or whether somebody's looking to speak to you, and just be present, be aware of what the conversation can be, and what it's starting to look like, and that will make a big difference in everybody's lives.
Yeah. Crystal?
I think it would be to just take the one thing that stood out for you. I think back when I used to do nutrition training, I used to think I was a fraud if I didn't, expose everything that I knew about nutrition on the very first call with a client, and realizing that they might be excited for 24 hours and then they will go back to ground zero and not do any changes. In fact, sometimes they'll even go backwards. But if I spent a whole hour telling them and motivating them to make one change out of all those hundreds, and maybe that one change is the most useful and suited to their lifestyle, the chances of success were so much greater. So I would recommend that if you're overwhelmed with all the different things that you could improve on or do better or call or add to your roster of resources, I would highly recommend to just pick a couple that really stood out and take one at a time.
Baby steps. I love it. Blaise?
I think my biggest thing that I always talk about is know thyself. And I feel like in this whole scheme of life, mental health, when we're struggling with mental health, we're struggling with a sense of purpose. And when we struggle with a sense of purpose, we don't really know ourselves. And we're going through a massive identity crisis. And so we need to get back to know thyself. It is the most profound quote in humankind. Because the moment I started to really peel back those layers and know who I am, flaws and all, the imperfect person I am, I fell in love with myself. And when I can fall in love with myself, I can conquer anything. Because now I know who I am and I'm willing to fight for her. And so when you can get to that juncture, you can do it. Whatever problem is facing you, whether it's family stuff, pandemic, job, financial, couple issues, anything, your children, it's heavy stuff. It's heavy. And you sit there and you're like, I can't do this anymore. And I say that on a weekly basis. And I'm like, no, because I have figured out who I am. So Blaise, you know yourself. You got to fight for her now. And you make that internal decision and that resolute spirit where I now become resilient. And that is the whole point, is to know thyself, to have a sense of purpose, and to walk out my destiny.
I mean, when you talk about flaws, literally I'm a walking flaw. And I'm going to share one too, because, just recently I started dealing with seeing a psychologist, and I'm not at the point to, ready to open up and talk about it, but the one thing that I've always said all along, and I've really noticed through this process of what we've gone through is listening. When somebody phones me up and says, hey, I don't know you, but will you go for coffee? And I'm like, absolutely. I just listen. I don't say, yeah, but this is what I went through, or yeah, but. It's something that you just take it in. That person just needs to to talk to somebody. So you don't have to give them an answer, you don't have to share your stories, but the most important part on some of that is just sitting back and listening to what somebody who is reaching out for help has to say. So that's kind of, I really like to thank Crystal, Fabian, Derek, Blaise for being vulnerable here, everybody here for coming out, being vulnerable, trying to change the narrative. Obviously, Krista, you're a rock star, and this is something that we absolutely love and we all support. So thanks again for the panel, for this discussion, and Blaise, I guess back to you.